Hello dear students, good morning. Welcome back to the lecture series on Paradise Lost, Book 1. In the last lecture, I have given some details about Paradise Lost as an epic written by John Milton, an example of literary epic. And then I also discussed about some of the biographical details of the poet John Milton. In today's lecture, we will focus on Paradise Lost Book 1, which is there for our syllabus. What are its contents? What is the subject matter? How is it written? So, there are lots of aspects we will be discussing about Paradise Lost Book 1 henceforth. As I said, Paradise Lost contains 12 books and the number of lines runs into thousands. The first book consists of 798 lines, and among those 798 lines, the first 26 lines are meant for invocation, or it's a sort of prayer. Then the story begins from 27 onwards. The whole of book 1 is written in the same meter, that is blank verse. And there are some specialities of this book. We will discuss them as we go on with further discussions. Before understanding the story of book 1, we need to understand the background story, because as I said, John Milton has continued the tradition, epic tradition of using the technique of in medias res, that is, the story begins in the middle of the things, which means that something has already happened before the action begins and it can be recounted later. So there is already a background story which has happened before action starts in book 1. So what is the story, background story? It is certainly taken from the Holy Bible in the chapter Genesis, which is the source, primary source of Paradise Lost. So the story goes like this. God has his place, which is named heaven. He is the king of heaven. He is the only ruler of heaven. And as a king, he has got his assistants, who are called angels. And these angels have some supernatural qualities. Although they can't be as superior as God himself, they too have certain powers which make them superhumans. For example, one special quality is that they have magical powers, which we will see in book 1 eventually, that some of them can fly, they have wings, and they can increase their size, they can reduce their size at their will. So they have certain supernatural qualities, that's why they are called angels. Now what happens? Just like any other political situation, any other human situation in which there is a struggle for power, there is also a struggle for power in the heaven, which begins with this angel called Lucifer. Lucifer is actually an angel, a servant of God, but he is not satisfied being servant to God, and he wants to rule over the heaven. He wants to take the position of king of heaven. Therefore, due to this hunger or greed for power, he creates his own army of angels, and they start waging an impious war against God in the heaven. It is at this point we see that there is a difference between angels. They form two different groups of angels. One of them is good angels group, and the other one is evil angels group, which is led by Lucifer. It is named as a civil war in heaven, by John Milton, because it is not a war between two different places like the wars happening between two different countries. It is happening within one place called heaven. So it is nothing but a kind of civil war waged against good God by these evil angels. And once these angels turn to be evil, we start naming Lucifer as Satan, the most evil character in the book Paradise Lost. In fact, he is the antagonistic character, villainous character in Paradise Lost. So now there is a rivalry created between Satan on one side and God on the other side. Satan wants to take the position of God, but what happens in the war? Civil war is lost by the evil angels. God and his good angels beat the evil angels in the war, and they are thrown out of the heaven. Now there is something interesting happening when they are thrown out of heaven, because in the biblical story there was only heaven in the beginning. There is no earth. So where could they fall? Now here there is also the concept of astronomy rather. When we have this earth, out of this earth if we go, there is all emptiness and blackness, darkness. So the descriptions are similar here. When God beats Satan and his followers, evil angels, in the civil war, they are all sent out of heaven, they are thrown out of heaven ruthlessly by good angels. And then the descriptions are given in book number 1, how they fall from heaven into a dark abyss, an endless abyss. They fall for 9 days and 9 nights, they keep falling. So this is the downfall, we can call. Symbolically, it is the downfall of nature. Earlier he was a good angel, but now when he was thrown out because of the impious war he waged against God, his downfall is sure, his downfall is certain. And Satan, Lucifer and his followers, bad angels, all of them fall deep down in the darkness. That darkness is called as hell. So there is a dichotomy, there is a hierarchy here created. In the heaven only there is place only for God and the good angels, and in the hell, which is a horrible place, there are descriptions of hell. I will explain them one by one. So there are descriptions of hell, which is a very horrible place, is meant for the people whose downfall is certain, like Satan and his evil angels, for their bad deeds. So this is the story which happens before book number 1 begins. And what all happens through the whole epic, I will just tell in brief, then we can begin with book 1 in particular. So the story that I have told till now has happened already before John Milton begins with book 1 of Paradise Lost. So what happens throughout the course of Paradise Lost? In book 1, Satan and his angels are already fallen in the hell. Now they rise slowly one by one. Satan becomes their motivator. Satan becomes a king in the hell, and he starts gathering his army of all the evil angels, tries to motivate them and tell them that no matter if we have lost the war against God, we will wage war once again with God. And this time Satan knows the capacity of God, so he says to his followers that we will wage a war in any way that is possible. We will either fight directly or we can even fight indirectly against God. But somehow we have to fight against God because He is our enemy. So that enmity, the emotion of enmity, rivalry, gets reinforced in the character Satan, and he becomes a very strong negative force throughout Paradise Lost epic. Slowly he gathers his army, he calls his subordinate evil angels like Beelzebub, Lucifer, Mammon and many other. The list is there in book 1, we will discuss them later. So he calls all of them together, he motivates them to fight against God, and they create a temple of their own which is called as Pandemonium. They create a temple for themselves in hell and they name it Pandemonium. The word Pandemonium is an invention of John Milton. Here we can see the Latin scholarship of John Milton. Pan is all, demons is all the demons put together in a place that is called as Pandemonium. So they create a huge temple in the hell to organize their forces against God, and that is nothing but Pandemonium. So the story of book 1 ends here. Then in the following books the story goes on like this. Now they all together plan to wage a war against God. They start making strategies. They want to know how they can fight against God. So what they do is they start using their brains, and Satan tells them that God has planned to create paradise in which he wanted to create humans. And Satan says, if we can't fight with God or against God directly, we will destroy his creation. Thereby it will be as equal to the destruction of God himself. So to destroy God, we have to destroy his creations. So having known this fact that God is creating paradise, which is nothing but earth, which is also called as the Garden of Eden, Satan knows these things and he tells his followers, his friends, that we will destroy the humans and we will destroy the paradise which will be created by God in the coming days. Later, all the followers of Satan agree to this, and Satan starts his journey from the hell in search of this earth which is newly created by God. And there are descriptions of how beautiful this paradise or earth is in the following books. So he wanders through the space, meets different planets across the space, and finally reaches paradise. Even he is astonished with the beauty of paradise. He is astonished with the creative power of God who has created the paradise, but he is resolved that he will destroy the creation of God. So he is determined to do his action and take revenge against God for having thrown him out of heaven. So wandering through the space, he finally reaches the paradise. Now he has to hide himself, because in the paradise God had created only one pair of humans, that is Adam and Eve, and God had told that the whole earth, the whole paradise is to enjoy for only Adam and Eve. They were the first creation. In the Christian mythology, we call them the first parents of human beings, first human parents. Now Satan has taken an entry on the paradise. He is appreciating the beauty, but he is determined to destroy this beautiful paradise. So now, how will he destroy the humans? See, this is like the films in which we see that the enemy knows the plans of his own enemy, right? In the same way, Satan knows how God has created paradise and what are the conditions God has put on Adam and Eve in order to enjoy the paradise. So he also knows the condition that God has abandoned both Adam and Eve, to eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge, which was at the center of paradise or the Garden of Eden. That was the tree of knowledge. God had forbidden both Adam and Eve to eat the apple or eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge. If they eat this fruit, they will see pain and death. They will get knowledge, their innocence will be lost, but their life will be full of pains and death follows them. So Satan knows about this forbiddance. Now his aim is to tempt both Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge, so that they fall into misery, they fall into painful death, and thereby they are cursed by God himself. This is the motto, this is the motive of Satan, who was trying to take revenge against God. So now he does not take his own form, because he is a very horrifying form, and there are angels to protect paradise. They will easily recognize Satan if they catch him. So he has to change the form now. So he changes his own form from that satanic form to that of a serpent. This is the reason why in Christian mythology, in Christian traditions, a snake is not valued so much. In fact, it is totally different in Indian context. In Hindu culture, in Indian cultures, snake is respected, but in Christian culture, a serpent or a snake is not respected, because it tempted the humans to eat from the fruit of from the tree of knowledge. So Satan now changes his form and becomes a serpent. He enters the Garden of Eden, where he sees Eve, who was working in her garden alone, and he goes near Eve. He appreciates her beauty. She is flattered by the beautiful flattering language of Satan in the form of serpent, and finally the Satan in the form of serpent achieves his goal. He finally succeeds in tempting Eve to eat the apple from the tree of knowledge. That's why we call it Adam's apple, right? That is the concept. So, tempted by Satan, Eve eats the fruit from the tree of knowledge. Satan has told, if you eat that fruit, you will get knowledge, you will be powerful, you can become equal to God. And with lot of other temptations, Satan succeeds in his motive. Eve eats the apple from the tree of knowledge, and when Adam comes to know that Eve has eaten the fruit from the tree of knowledge, Adam also follows Eve, because he says, I am having no other company than you. If you are happy, I will be happy. If you go into doom, I will also go into doom with you. So he also eats that same fruit from the tree of knowledge, and both of them get knowledge now. Till now they were innocent. Till now they had no feelings of sexuality towards each other. Till now they did not have feeling of shame, or they were not being ashamed of their nakedness. Now for the first time, after they eat from the tree of knowledge, they commit what is called as So there is the concept of the original sin. In Christian traditions, there is the concept of original sin. What is that original sin? Is eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge. That was the original sin according to biblical mythologies. So they have both committed the original sin by eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge. They both get ashamed of their nakedness. They get involved in sexual activities, and they even start blaming each other. So they were never quarreling till they ate from the tree of knowledge. Now when they got knowledge, all their innocence is lost. They start quarreling, fighting against each other, they cry, and all these things happen in book number 9. Especially book number 9 is very important because it is called as the climax of the whole story. The original sin is the climax of the epic Paradise Lost, and this is committed in book number 9. How Serpent tempts Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge, how Adam follows the fate of Eve, and then how both of them lose their innocence, gain knowledge, but with knowledge they also get pain and frustration. Now when God comes to know that they both have eaten from the tree of knowledge, He comes and scolds His children Adam and Eve, and He says that you will be punished for this crime, this sin. There will be death in the human world, and you will see a lot of pain. So this is the punishment that God gives to Adam and Eve and to the whole human race that follows them. So God says there will be a lot of pain and death in the human world, even though knowledge has been imparted to the humans. It will be a world of pain and death until the point when Jesus Christ, the Son of God, comes to resurrect them from the misery of life. So this is the whole story of Paradise Lost, taken from Bible by John Milton. Thus, when we look at the whole story of Paradise Lost, we believe that John Milton was a true believer of Christian mythologies. He was an ardent lover of the Bible, and also we get a sense of greatness about John Milton when we read the epic line by line, because it is not just the story of Bible he tells, it is also his knowledge of various other subjects. His scholarship is completely reflected in Paradise Lost, and that is the reason why we call it his magnum opus or his greatest work. Let me just give you some example why we can call John Milton a great scholar, especially in book number 1. Later also we can find his scholarship in the following books, but in book number 1, as you go on reading the lines, you will understand that John Milton had a deep knowledge of geography, of space science, of theology, of human philosophy, of human psychology, and many other subjects. This is how Paradise Lost becomes one of the most important texts in English literature. I have told you in brief the whole story in a nutshell, but what happens in book 1 until the creation of pandemonium, we will look at it in the next class. Thank you so much.